matter what hour your clock strikes. Here, it's always Halloween. And I'm always your haunted host, Luce Tomlin Brenner. Welcome to Small Frights Friday. On these very special episodes, I like to share a curated selection of calls from the All Hallows Hotline and letters from our EEEEK mailbag. This episode is sponsored by the Patreon Ghoul Gang, who is fully producing every episode of It's Always Halloween. Thank you so much, you lovely ghouls. We could not do it without you. In fact, we have 3 brand new members that I want to welcome. Thank you so much, Isabella, Diego, and Amy. It's wonderful to have you a part of our pack. Just in time for this weekend's Patreon movie night, we are screening 1993's The Halloween Tree, the Hanna-Barbera cartoon adaptation of the book of the same name by Ray Bradbury, which I have been reading excerpts of for free on our YouTube channel. So make sure you check that out. If you like my voice and enthusiasm, I'm doing an unedited reading of the book on YouTube, and I think it's pretty fun, pretty silly. I'm getting a lot out of it this time around. I really liked the book growing up, but I haven't read it for years, and it is more like a song than a book. It's very lyrical, lots of onomatopoeia, and the imagery is at times extremely chilling. And I really felt as I was reading it that I was looking into this deep part of me that was forged as a child, this part of me that became obsessed with Halloween through reading this book. It's been such an interesting experience. And I think that this is part of the overall Halloween experience for so many of us. As we've talked about before, nostalgia isn't everything, but there is something very exciting about coming face to face with things that were a big part of your youth and re-examining them and rediscovering them, facing the ghosts of your past and figuring out how much of what they are whispering to you is still true about who you are, true about your interests. We're always changing and evolving, but it's fun to kind of look back and be like, wow, I really am the same person who read this book as a kid in so many ways. So many of you have recommended the film. I've never seen it, so I'm very excited to be screening it this Sunday, 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to do a little live discussion about it, watch the movie, and chat all the way through it. If you like, the chat is always optional, but there are lots of good jokes there. The Ghoul Gang is quite funny. So if you have yet to sign up for the Patreon, just go to patreon.com/itsalwayshalloween. The following weekend, November 14th, we will be watching Addams Family Values, and then we will be getting a little more into the holiday season. So there are going to be some fun ghost stories coming out on Patreon that reflect the holidays. For now, there's 2 new Victorian ghost stories up: The Shell of Sense and The Shadows on the Wall. Both written by female authors in the early 1900s. Both stories are 30 plus minutes long with original sound backing from our incredible Pete Burns. So if you're not ready to let go of Halloween yet, you know you don't have to when you're here with me. I've got plenty of fun goodies in store for you still. In fact, I have so many calls and EEEEKmails lined up for you to give you a tantalizing taste of celebration as we walk into the month of November. We don't have to stop. We never have to stop. In fact, I've got a call right now from one of the coolest women I've ever met. That's right, it's Pete's mom.
Hi, Lucy. It's Pete's mom, Jerry Lynn. It was an absolute joy to meet you on my recent visit to Los Angeles. And I know I was trying to share with you a story about trick-or-treating in the summertime when I was a child, so I just wanted to expand upon that a little bit. One of my good friends and I loved Halloween and trick-or-treating so much that one boring summer day we decided to go door to door with our trick-or-treat bags. No costumes, just the trick-or-treat bags. And our neighbors would look in their pantries for something to give us, and oftentimes it was some old candy. And if they couldn't find anything, sometimes it would just be pennies. Yikes. Well, that morphed into going to one specific neighbor's house. Her name was Mrs. Rosa. Mrs. Rosa always had a stick of gum for us. So we remembered that she always had the good stuff. So from then on, Luce, we would just go to Mrs. Rosa's house. We would ring the bell and we would just ask her, Mrs. Rosa, can I have a piece of gum? As it turned out, Mrs. Rosa was always very happy to see us. Well, Luce, I'm wondering if any of your other listeners have ever trick-or-treated on other days besides Halloween. And did they get anything else besides old candy, pennies, or a stick of gum? Thanks, Luce. I love your podcast so much. Keep up the great work. Bye.
Jerry Lynn, I am obsessed with this message. Thank you so much for calling, and I agree. It was a stone cold delight to finally meet you. For the lanterns, a little context, Pete and I worked on a film this summer together, Demon Juice, a part of our production collective, Too Much, and it got to premiere at Screamfest LA early in October. So that was one of the fun Halloween things Pete and I got to do together, and Jerry Lynn flew out for the premiere. It was so awesome to have her there and finally get to meet in person. And this story just brings me so much joy. I love that you weren't hemmed in or constrained by time, by the calendar. That is the very heart, the mission, the soul of It's Always Halloween. That the creativity of just being like, yeah, wait, we like trick-or-treating. Why don't we trick-or-treat? Why are we being bossed around by the calendar? And the fact that everyone in your neighborhood played along and got excited about it, it's so sweet. It reminds me of the EEEEKmail that we read on the Stephen Ray Morris episode from Hallow Weekend from Lantern Julie, who told us about trick-or-treating around her dorm and to all the college parties happening all around her school. That type of generosity on the part of the people whom you trick-or-treated to and the creativity from you and your friend is the heart of the Halloween spirit. I wish I had thought of that as a kid. I was very much dedicated to the calendar. It's only been in my adult life where I have thrown off the chains of numbers on paper and realized that I could celebrate lots of things, lots of times, and it's not just one opportunity and then many days of sulking. Bless your neighbor who always had a stick of gum. I myself am an avid gum chewer, and I hope one day that I can be the lady with gum for all the children in my neighborhood. I second Jerry Lynn and say, please, lanterns, let us know if you have felt the spirit throughout other times of the year and decided to hit the bricks with your trick-or-treat bag in the summer, the spring, or even the winter, and what kinds of reactions did you get if so? And if you've never done it before, well, heck, what better time than now? It's the longest possible time before more calendar Halloween. So you've got many months ahead of you to try some off-season trick-or-treating. Maybe we could come up with a fun name for it, like advanced placement trick-or-treating or the trick-or-treat playoffs. Hit us with those creative name ideas and those stories. Jerry Lynn and I are very excited to hear if this is something that has possessed more lanterns out there. Thank you so much for calling, Jerry Lynn, and thank you for sharing this marvelous story with all of us. Again, it was wonderful to get to meet you, and I just adore your son, Pete, who I could not make this podcast without. I know so many lanterns out here love him as well. You did a great job, Mom. Thank you. Up next, we have an EEEEKmail with the subject line, The Green Ribbon. Hi there, I was listening to your podcast, which I love as it's so entertaining and certainly puts me in a Halloween mood. The specific show I was listening to was The Green Ribbon. It was very enjoyable and provided information I was unaware of about the story and its many versions. Afterward, I went to listen to YouTube and I randomly searched Halloween. I chose to listen to a radio show from the 1940s that I had never heard of. Ooh, that sounds fun. Hitting play, unaware of what I was about to listen to, what was offered was a very similar rendition of the stories that you told. This narrative did involve the guillotine and had a similar beautiful young woman wearing the ribbon. I'm not sure why my evening revolved around that story from different platforms, yet I wanted to share because it felt spooky. Thanks to you and thanks to Pete for your podcast. I've become a loyal listener. Jim. Well, thanks so much, Jim. That is very spooky. I love that. I think the idea of pulling up radio shows from the 40s on YouTube is very clever. I have not thought to do that before. But radio shows then were essentially the podcasts of yore, so I imagine that there's lots of really interesting Halloween fare from that time, as it is when Halloween was getting more widely popularized in American culture. Now, this reminds me of an article that was shared on the Hard Times News recently. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Hard Times is a satire website, much like The Onion or Reductress, but it's satire all about punk music and culture. I have a few friends that write for it, and I grew up in the punk scene in Cleveland, so I get a kick out of it. It's one of my favorite sites to follow. But around Halloween, they had the headline, "Elderly woman on deathbed finally lets husband untie mysterious green ribbon around her neck, revealing a Sublime tattoo." Of course, Sublime here is the ska band from the early 90s. And, you know, that would be quite embarrassing. So I understand why someone would want to hide that away. This is coming from somebody who aggressively loved Sublime as a teenager and even had a bumper sticker with the name Sublime in Old English across like the entire back windshield of my Colt Vista station wagon. Shout out to the author of that article, Eli Johnson. I will drop that in the show notes for you guys. I think it'll give you a little chuckle. Thanks so much for your EEEEKmail, Jim. I'm so happy to have you as a loyal listener. And I hope that It's Always Halloween has creepy crossovers in your life for many months and years to come. Our next hotline call is coming all the way from Alabama. Can you handle the anticipation?
Hey, Luce, and all the other Luceo lanterns out there. My name is Ashley. I just wanted to call in. I just listened to the Kitchen Witch episode. So listening to you for about 2 weeks, that's where I'm at. You asked for people to call in and tell about their Rocky Horror experiences from their younger years. I knew about Rocky Horror as a teenager, but never watched it until my early 20s when I participated in a theatrical production with my local cinema. So they did the thing where the movie's on the big screen. We're the characters. We acted out. Everybody in the crowd has all the fun props and things to throw and all that. But I wasn't very familiar with it until then, and we practiced every Tuesday and Thursday. So I became very familiar because, of course, I had to act it out and lip sync. But I was magenta. I had to dig up an old picture, but my costume wasn't exact. I was working with what was in my closet. But my husband did my hair. He works at a salon. He took it and he wrapped it in these really large bobby pins and gave me this big crimpy, poofy fro. So I would look more like magenta. So that was a lot of fun. Also, I wanted to say I do love your podcast. I know everybody says that. And here I am after Halloween still enjoying it. I wasn't sure, after Halloween, our moods kind of switch a little bit. But I think it's because you go so deep into the origins and the history, and I'm always for digging deeper. I love looking back and seeing, like, where did this come from and how did people act before we were quote unquote civilized? So I love that you do that. And I'm very excited about the witchy stuff coming out, which maybe it already has because we're in November and I'm still in July on the podcast. But as far as digging deep, I wanted you to know that I used to teach a children's class at the local library, and I loved teaching them the origins of the different holidays when it would come to those different times of year, or about the traditions. Sometimes it made me a little nervous because, you know, we're heavily Christian around here. I live in Alabama. And often the origins weren't Christian, but they always took it so well. They were so sweet. They loved me. I loved them. And it was just really fun to dig deeper and to teach that to the kids. So anyway, this is my third time recording. Hopefully it won't cut me off before I'm done, but I'm going to say bye now before it does. Continue to do the good work, and thank you so much. See you later.
Ashley, this was such a lovely call. Thank you for following up about Rocky Horror, one of my all-time favorite movies. I always wanted to be in the cast, and I think it is so rad that you got to do this. I love the picture that you sent me. It reminds me so much of being young and doing silly, fun, outrageous things. You've also inspired me to dig through my old photo albums and find the picture of me after I saw Rocky Horror live for the very first time, and I have the big red V for Virgin on my forehead, which is what they call you if you've never seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show live before. In my screening specifically at the Clazel Theater in Bowling Green, Ohio, they had the entire cast line up on stage with their legs tented, and everybody who was a, quote, virgin who had not seen the show before had to get down on their hands and knees and crawl between everyone's legs, and then each actor gave the person crawling a little spank. It was wild. It was like my third or fourth week of college, and I was like, I'm really living. This is what it's all about. I've broken out of the chains of my hometown, and I'm an adult. So when I look at your picture, all of those feelings rush back over me. So I'm going to put both of those up on the Instagram, maybe as a nice throwback Trick-or-Treat Thursday. Very happy to hear that you're still enjoying the podcast, even though calendar Halloween has passed. You have not missed the witch episodes yet. This is a great time for me to be super transparent and let everybody know that, yes, I am still working on them. The reason that it's taken longer is really just that as the world got vaccinated and opened up again, and there became more expectations to be in person professionally and socially, I could not fit in the 20 to 30 hours of work that it takes to put into the deep dive history episodes. But never fear, those are my favorite part of the podcast. It's the reason I started this to begin with, and I have so much research done. I really just need to have a little more time to organize all of it. So I am very happy that the Patreon has been doing so well, because that's what's going to allow me to leave one of my 3 jobs, which will get me another 20 or so hours free a week so that I can work again on the history episodes. So my goal is for them to come out in the new year. Please stay tuned. I have a lot of surprises coming in 2022. I have a lot of big plans. And again, it's all thanks to the Patreon Ghoul Gang. More support from you guys means more time for me to create more work for you. So Ashley, this was fantastic. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to the Lantern Life. And I look forward to hearing from you more in the future. And speaking of the Patreon Ghoul Gang, our next EEEEKmail is from one of our lovely members. This subject line is Halloween horrors. Hello, Luce and fellow lanterns. I wanted to share something that I absolutely loved as a kid, and I'm wondering if other folks are familiar with this as well. Being the Halloween and spooky weird things loving kid that I was, I was obsessed with a tape called Halloween Horrors by J. Robert Elliott. It originally came out on vinyl in 1977 and stars Michael Bell, the voice of Duke in G.I. Joe, and Peter Cullen, Optimus Prime in Transformers. Oh my gosh, that's of such a moment. The album is a radio play for kids with creepy sound effects on side B. It all centers around a man who inherits an old mansion. He's driving to see it for the first time during a storm on Halloween, so you know things are going to be fun. Even though, or perhaps because, it scared me, I listened to it all the time. Again, being the poltergeist watching, scary stories to tell in the dark reading weird kid, I also made my friends listen to it in the dark during slumber parties. I also made them sleep next to my giant stuffed clown after Poltergeist came out because I have a dark sense of humor, but that's another story. Anyway, I finally found it again on YouTube, and while it's a bit cheesy now, it still retains some of its spookiness, particularly the way a certain spirit says, "My baby, have you seen my baby?" That part always gets me. I'm including the YouTube link so that those unfamiliar with it can hear it, and to help bring back some nostalgia to those who listened to it growing up like I did. I hope you all enjoy it. Mindy. Mindy, I loved this deeply. I have never heard of it before. I listened, your description, I was immediately in. I was like, this is exactly what I want. I immediately listened to the YouTube that you sent, and it gave me chills, and it made me laugh, and it just gave me that like sense of creative excitement that really good Halloween stuff instills in me. And I thought this was really fun to listen to now a couple of days after Halloween. It just kept me in that perfect mindset. And it's really unlike anything I've heard recently. In fact, I found it very inspiring, and it made me want to make something similar for the lanterns. So I have been doing some writing, nothing to reveal yet, but I'm thinking if you guys like this radio play that I will put in the show notes, I might make an updated one for you guys coming soon. And Mindy, this also reminded me of this poem that my mother used to read at these annual Halloween parties my neighbors would have every year when I was a little kid. The Leshes, who were this pack of 3 girls that I was really good friends with who lived across the street from me growing up, their family would have a Halloween party for all the neighborhood kids every year. And my mom would always read this terrifying poem called Little Orphan Annie, which I know we're all probably familiar with Annie the musical, but this one is much darker. I'm going to read it to you now. Little Orphan Annie came to our house to stay and washed the cups and saucers up and brushed the crumbs away and shoo the chickens off the porch and dust the hearth and sweep and made the fire and baked the bread and earned her board and keep. And all of us other children, when the supper things were done, we sat around the fire and had the mostest fun. And listening to witch tales as Annie tells about, and the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. Once there was a little boy who wouldn't say his prayers, so when he went to bed at night, away up the stairs, his mammy heard him holler and his daddy heard him bawl. And when they turned the kivers down, he wasn't there at all. And they seeked him in the rafter room and cubby hole and press, and seeked him up the chimney flue and everywhere, I guess. But all they ever found was his pants and roundabout. And when the goblins get you, they'll get you if you don't watch out. One time, a little girl was all laughs and grins, and she made fun of everyone, all her blood and kin. And once when there was company and old folks were around, she mocked them and shocked them and said, she didn't care a bound. And this, as she kicked her heels and turned to run and hide, there was 2 big black things standing by her side. And they snatched her through the ceiling, for she knew what she's about. And the goblins will get you if you don't watch out. And little orphan Annie says, when the blaze is blue, and the lamp wick sputters, and the wind goes woo, and when you hear the crickets quit, and the moon is very gray, and the lightning bugs in dew are all squinched away, you better mind your parents and your teachers fond and dear, and cherish them that love you, and dry an orphan's tear, and help the poor and needy ones that all cluster about. 'Cause if you don't, the goblins will get you. That's if you don't watch out. Now that poem is from the late 1800s, so it has some odd words, phrases, and there's a few words that trip me up there, but I hope you were able to catch a little bit of the chilling imagery and kind of put yourself in 8-year-old me shoes and be like, oh my God, 2 black shadows snatching you up on the ceiling just because you're laughing at your family? It's like a lot of pressure. I'll drop that Little Orphan Annie poem in the show notes along with Mindy's fantastic radio play suggestion. Thank you so much for that EEEEKmail. It was perfect. And you guys, this has brought us to the end of another episode of It's Always Halloween. Please call in and share what you did during your Hallow weekend. And if you haven't had a chance to yet, 2 bonus episodes came out on October 30th. I talked with Stephen Ray Morris of My Favorite Murder, The Purrcast, and See Jurassic Right. And we delved into trick-or-treat memories, and we answered a few EEEEKmails together. Stephen and I also did an episode for his podcast, See Jurassic Right, all about the hottest babes and dinosaurs in the movies. And I concentrated a lot of my picks on the Grindhouse films from the 60s and 70s. So if that piques your interest at all, check out that episode of See Jurassic Right. And then on Halloween, I released an episode in which I interviewed author Joseph Fink from Welcome to Night Vale, who this year published a new book called The Halloween Moon, which is for middle graders, but I enjoyed quite a bit. He really paints some fantastic imagery, and I related to the main character probably a little bit more than he intended a 30-something-year-old to. So check out those episodes and give us a call and share your Halloween memories of 2022. I know we're all dying to hear what you got up to. You can reach the All Hallows Hotline at 802-532-DEAD. Or you can write us that EEEEKmail at itsalwayshalloweenpodcast@gmail.com. You can also drop us a line on Instagram. Our handle there is It's Always Halloween Podcast. That's where I like to share pictures from the episodes and also share trick-or-treat pictures from lanterns, and I put any fun stuff that I find around the internet up there as well. As I said throughout the episode, if you love It's Always Halloween, please subscribe at patreon.com/itsalwayshalloween, or you can make a one-time donation using our tip jar. You can also support the podcast by buying It's Always Halloween merch on Redbubble. What an incredible Christmas gift for friends. In fact, if you're trying to do like one of those Yankee swaps or white elephant gift exchanges, it would be pretty funny to get someone a Christmas gift that says It's Always Halloween. Think about it. Think about it. This episode of It's Always Halloween was performed by me, Luce Tomlin Brenner, with some help from your fellow lanterns, Mindy, Ashley, Jerry Lynn, and Jim. Thank you so much for your contributions. The editing, theme music, and sound design is by the wonderful Pete Burns. Thank you so much, Pete. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at LTBcomedy and Pete at Mittenberries. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please subscribe and write us a little review so that other like-minded ghouls can find us. Just because the Halloween season is over doesn't mean we can't still find new ghouls. This is actually a very important time to find them, so your kind words really make a difference. We're also on the NPR One app, so subscribe to us there. And of course, you need to tell Ira Glass how much you love us. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of It's Always Halloween. And please come back next time, unless you get caught in an infinite loop of Sublime's greatest hits.